The envelope was already on the table when I walked in. No handshake, no eye contact, just that thin, white rectangle with my name typed too neatly, like someone had triple-checked it. "Effective immediately," Robert said without looking up. "Your title has been changed to Strategic Liaison. Compensation adjusted accordingly." That was it. No congratulations. No thank you. Just a new title I'd never heard of. And a 55% pay cut. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not because I was shocked, but because something colder had already crept up the back of my neck. My name is Nicole Vance. I'm 38 years old, and, until 6 minutes ago, I was the Senior Director of Aerospace Contracts at Halston Aerodyne, just last week. I closed the largest deal in company history, a $1.25 billion order for 5 long-range jets from a European conglomerate. 8 months of red-eyes, translations, backdoor negotiations, international compliance headaches, and I did it, alone. I should have been celebrated, but instead, I sat across from a man who couldn't even say my name out loud. 20 minutes earlier, I stood outside this very room, preparing notes on post-deal logistics. That's when the door opened. Lena walked out first, fresh-faced, 30 at most, and bouncing on her heels like she already owned the place. I recognized her, bright, ambitious, and dangerously unqualified. I had trained her during her internship 2 years ago. Behind her was Robert, laughing. They shook hands, casual, confident, synchronized. Neither saw me watching. Now here I was, holding a letter that had been printed yesterday, informing me I no longer held the position I had built from scratch. They didn't just strip my title. They erased me, quietly, cleanly, and a day in advance. I folded the letter, tucked it into my bag, and stood. I didn't say a word. Because this wasn't the time to fight. It was the time to remember everything, every smile, every silence, every name. They thought I was finished, but the ink wasn't even dry yet. The nameplate was gone. Not replaced, not misspelled, just gone. Where it once read Nicole Vance, Senior Director, the frosted glass door outside my office now stood bare, wiped clean like my 15 years at Halston had never happened. I stood there for a long moment, unsure whether to knock or grieve. That room, my room, was no longer mine. An intern passed behind me, balancing 2 coffee trays, and did a double take. "Need help finding something?" she asked innocently, not recognizing me. I gave a tight smile. "No, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." And then I turned away, gripping the handles of the cardboard box HR had kindly labeled Nicole's personal effects, and walked toward the elevators. Down 5 floors. Past departments I hadn't visited since my junior associate days. That's where I found my new space. Not an office, a cubicle, windowless, phoneless, the kind with carpeted half-walls and a flickering overhead light. Someone had left a tangled phone cord in the drawer. It smelled like toner and lemon disinfectant. No nameplate, no welcome. Just a post-it on the monitor. "Nicole, IT will set you up by EOD." I sat in the flimsy chair and looked around. On the wall across from me hung the new company org chart, freshly printed and laminated. I walked over slowly, hoping some part of me was still visible. I wasn't. Not at the top, not in the footnotes, not even under the Project Contributors section. Lena Maxwell had taken my spot, Director of Global Strategy Initiatives. The caption under her profile photo read, "A bold new vision for Halston's global future." I closed my eyes. The sharp ache that rose in my chest wasn't anger. It was mourning. Mourning for the version of me that had poured everything into this place. I wasn't just replaced, I was erased. That afternoon, a junior assistant from marketing stopped by, arms full of folders for a presentation. These were printed for tomorrow's leadership update, Can you make sure they get to Lena? I nodded numbly and took them. As she walked away, I noticed one folder had a page sticking out, a printed slide deck titled Contract Finalization, Munich Team, led by Nicole Vance. My photo was there. I remembered the day it was taken, after the signing, champagne glasses still in our hands, but someone had taken a red marker and crossed out my face. Literally, a thick red X. The slide had been reprinted with Lena's name and headshot in the final copy. I went back to my cubicle, opened the file cabinet beneath the desk, and flipped through the rows of labeled binders. The ones I had built, organized, color-coded, notes from every phase of negotiation. Except now, every tab that once read NV had been overwritten with LM. Nicole Vance had vanished. Lena Maxwell had taken her place. Her initials scrawled in hurried pen across contracts I had written in blood and no sleep. I closed the drawer gently and sat very still. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just let the silence settle in. What hurt most wasn't that they'd taken the office, or the title, or even the credit. It was that they had done it so easily, and I realized something then, something cold and solid. If they could erase me this fast, it meant they never intended to keep me. I didn't sleep for 8 months, I counted. From the first email sent at 3:20 a.m. to the final video call that wrapped past midnight in Munich. I was the only person holding the pieces of the $1.25 billion deal together. And now, sitting in a cubicle with someone else's initials on my binders, I wondered how they forgot that so fast. No, they didn't forget. They never bothered to understand. There were nights I reviewed engine specs on the floor of a layover hotel in Frankfurt, eyes burning from jet lag. There were mornings I smoothed my blazer over a hospital gown to take calls from Zurich, after collapsing from sheer exhaustion and dehydration. And there was one December, just 2 days before Christmas, when I sat alone in an airport cafe, watching my mother's FaceTime call ring out. I missed our annual dinner for the first time in 17 years. She said she understood, but I still saw the hurt behind her eyes. I gave Halston everything, every hour, every sacrifice, every version of myself. And when Avianex, our direct competitor, approached me 3 months ago with an offer to lead their global strategy team, I declined. I'm loyal to Halston, I told them. They offered stock. I said no. I went back to my office, shut the door, and kept working on the contract. That contract was my lifeline, my legacy. I hand-built every clause, reviewed every risk assessment, translated cultural nuances, caught errors that legal missed, and at the heart of it all was Clause 47B. It wasn't part of the standard draft. It wasn't even proposed by legal. It came during a dinner in Paris, when the client's COO leaned in and said, "We've been burned before. We need assurance. If you're not leading the implementation, the deal dies." So I added the clause myself, quietly, without telling Robert or Lena. I wrote it in plain language. Operational oversight shall remain under Nicole Vance. In the event of reassignment, client may void this agreement. They signed. We celebrated. And now, the very line I had written to protect the client's trust had become my only line of defense, hidden in plain sight, unread by those too arrogant to believe I was indispensable. I leaned back in my creaky chair, fists clenched beneath the desk, not out of rage, but resolve. They thought they stole the deal from me, but I never gave it away. The strange thing about betrayal is that it always echoes backward. Sitting in that gray cubicle, staring at the name Lena Maxwell on contracts I had bled to build, I kept thinking about one night, the one moment I had truly felt seen. And it wasn't at Halston. It was in Munich. The last phase of negotiations had pushed all of us to the brink. Legal teams were feuding over jurisdictional clauses. Engineering leads kept changing specs midstream. And the client's board was growing restless. The deal was hanging by threads no one else could see, but I was the one holding them. That Friday night, the CEO of the client company, Mikhail Beringer, sent me a text. Dinner, just us. No agenda, 7:30 p.m. Schumannstrasse. I hesitated. We still had unresolved drafts, but something about the wording told me this wasn't about paperwork. When I arrived at the quiet, wood-paneled restaurant tucked near the Bavarian State Opera, he was already seated. No assistants, no laptops, just a glass of red and a folded linen napkin. "I wanted to speak with you off record," he began. "Not as executives, as people." I said nothing, just listened. He told me about their last deal, a billion-dollar aerospace contract that collapsed mid-implementation because the negotiator was suddenly removed. No explanation. The replacement had no context, no connection, and no credibility. "It cost us 3 years," he said, "and half our reputation." Then he looked at me, right in the eyes. "Nicole, we're not signing with Halston. We're signing with you. If you disappear, the deal disappears too." In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not praise, not performance metrics. Trust. Genuine, human trust. I nodded and promised him I'd see it through. Beginning to end. Back in my hotel room that night, a handwritten envelope had been slid under my door. Inside was a short note, penned in deliberate cursive. "To the one who earned our confidence through action." Not title. "We don't forget those who carry weight with grace." Ems Beringer. I kept that letter in my planner, tucked behind business cards and boarding passes. No one at Halston ever saw it. They wouldn't have cared. But now, as I sat surrounded by silence and erased initials, I opened that letter again, creased, but intact. They could replace my name on every chart, but they could never recreate that night in Munich. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 8 a.m., just like I always had. No one expected me to. After what they'd done, stripping my title, cutting my salary, replacing my name, they likely assumed I'd disappear. Walk away in silence or storm out in rage. That's how people usually go when they've been humiliated. But I showed up, hair tied back, blazer pressed, eyes forward, and not a single soul knew what to do with me. Lena walked past my cubicle once that morning. She didn't say anything, just glanced sideways like she wasn't sure whether to smile or avoid eye contact altogether. I gave her nothing, no smile, no bitterness, no reaction. Across the hall, Robert's door remained half open. He hadn't spoken to me since the demotion, not even a formal debrief. I caught his reflection once in the glass. He looked straight at me, then looked away. I didn't chase them. I didn't demand to be heard. Instead, I turned to my screen and began writing emails. Not applications, not goodbye notes, blueprints, one by one. I reconnected with former colleagues, people I trusted, engineers I once flew across continents with, procurement leads who owed me more than one deadline, even 2 former Halston execs now quietly leading teams at competitor firms. I didn't ask for help. I just asked questions. Soft ones. Strategic ones. If someone with deep aerospace compliance experience were available in the next quarter, would that be of interest? Do you still oversee post-deal integration workflows? How's the morale on your international team lately? I wasn't planting seeds. I was checking soil conditions. That Thursday, I took a call during my lunch break. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Area code 2102, Washington, D.C. "Nicole Vance?" the voice asked, calm, professional. "Yes," I replied, glancing at my screen. "My name is Allison Kerr. I'm an independent contract law attorney. I just reviewed the agreement tied to the Halston-Urava jet deal." I sat up straighter. She continued, "I believe you authored Clause 47B. "I did," I said, carefully. There was a pause. Then, it's airtight, simple language, direct intent, and enforceable in any international court. They don't realize what you gave them. I exhaled, slowly. Something between relief and confirmation settled in my chest. They're blind, she added. That clause was the smartest part of the entire deal, and they've walked right past it. That night. I stayed late, not working, just watching the office hum around me. Lena left early. Robert didn't come out at all. I sat alone in that small cubicle, in the glow of a desktop monitor, with one hand resting gently on the drawer that held the original copy of the contract, still with my ink, still with my initials. I said nothing. I sent no warning, no clue, because power, when you truly hold it, doesn't shout. It waits, quietly, confidently, until it's needed. And they had no idea I still had it. I didn't go to France. Lena did. She left on Monday morning, strutting through the Dulles executive terminal like someone who'd earned the right to be there. First-class boarding pass, fresh-pressed blazer, a new Halston-issued briefcase I'd once picked out for high-level travel. Ironic. I heard she smiled all the way through boarding. I didn't wish her luck. I didn't say a word. Because I knew something she didn't. The client's headquarters sat in Toulouse, a sleek marble and glass structure I knew well. I'd been there 3 times, knew which espresso in the lobby was drinkable, which elevator lagged, and how the CEO's assistant liked her documents formatted. By the time Lena arrived at 10:12 a.m., she'd already sent a check-in selfie to someone in HR. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the name Nicole Vance wasn't just tied to the signature page, it was built into the bones of the deal. The message hit Halston HQ like a brick through glass. At 4:30 p.m., a formal email arrived from Urava's legal department. It was short, cold, precise. Per Clause 47B, this contract is contingent upon post-deal transition being led by Ms. Nicole Vance. We do not recognize substitutes. No further meetings will be held. They CC'd everyone, Robert, Lena, legal, compliance, even the board. No sugarcoating, no wiggle room. And just like that, the $1.25 billion handover had no one to lead it, because I wasn't in France, and no one had asked me to be. I found out about the email when a junior analyst walked past my cubicle, wide-eyed. He didn't say anything, but his expression said it all. People started whispering in break rooms, elevator lobbies, Slack threads disguised as team check-ins. No one mentioned my name out loud, but they didn't have to. The story leaked. Apparently, someone in the comms team tried to turn it into a press blurb, something light, a pivot story. An hour later, the draft vanished. Rumor had it Robert ordered the entire thread deleted and warned internal comms. No coverage, not a word about France. But it was too late. I didn't have to be in that building in Toulouse. I didn't have to raise my voice or post online. I just had to wait. And I did. By 7:45 p.m., I was still at my desk, sipping cold coffee and watching unread messages stack up in my inbox. Subject lines like, client delay, urgent, need clarification, clause 47B, did you write this part of the contract? All of them sent in a panic, none of them addressed to me. Still, I was in every sentence. Lena didn't stop by the next morning. Robert didn't call. But I heard someone say she cried in the executive bathroom. Maybe that part was true. Maybe it wasn't. I didn't care, because I had done nothing but be remembered. And they had done everything to be forgotten. And now, they were locked out of a deal I no longer had to defend. By 9:00 a.m. the next day, the executive floor was vibrating with panic. You could hear it through muffled walls, fast footsteps, voices that were too sharp for casual conversations. No one smiled. No one made eye contact. I didn't need a calendar invite to know what was happening. Robert had called an emergency meeting, while I sat quietly downstairs, pretending to type a report that no one would read. The top brass at Halston scrambled. Phones rang nonstop. Legal huddled behind locked doors. PR drafted 3 versions of a press release, none of which ever saw daylight. And in the boardroom? It wasn't pretty. A colleague who owed me more than one quiet favor sent me a message that read only, "Robert's trying to blame legal. It's not going well." They were spinning. Hard. First, Robert claimed Clause 47B slipped through because legal had been understaffed. Then he argued the client was overreacting and would come around with the right wording. Next, he blamed me for being too involved in the deal. That was the part that made me laugh, quietly, bitterly. I heard later that someone on the board finally cut through the noise. Her name was Catherine Lennox, sharp, strategic, and never known for raising her voice. But she had reviewed the contract herself, twice. She raised her hand and said, slowly, "Let's stop pretending this was a clerical error." I recall a closed-door conversation just weeks before the signing where Robert explicitly said Nicole was making leadership look weak, that her visibility needed to be scaled back. No one responded. I wasn't in that room. But my silence filled it anyway. By 2:25 p.m., the final blow came. An email from Eurova. Subject line, "Contract status, formal termination notice." The body was brutal in its precision. Due to unapproved personnel changes in violation of Clause 47B, Eurova considers the contract null and void. All associated obligations are hereby dissolved. It wasn't just addressed to Halston's executive team. It was also sent to the Investors Group inbox, the press relations team, the private inbox of every board member, that night. I stayed late, not out of duty, but to observe. Robert's door stayed shut. Lena's light never came on. From my cubicle, I could hear the hallway clock ticking. I watched 3 different executives leave the building without their jackets. One of them looked like he'd been crying. Someone from accounting walked past my desk and stopped. "You okay?" she asked. Awkward but sincere. I nodded. "Fine." Because I was. For the first time in weeks. I didn't feel erased. I didn't feel powerless. I had written that clause. I had protected the deal. They ignored me, and now they were watching everything they built start to slide. In the end, there was no press release, no spin, just silence, panic, and a void they couldn't explain away. And I sat in it, calm, uninvited, still here. It came at 9:15 a.m. on a Wednesday. I was refilling my coffee when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, Manhattan area code. I almost didn't answer. I was tired. Of everything. But something told me to take it. "Nicole Vance?" a smooth voice asked. "Yes. Speaking." "This is Jonah Patel from Avianex. We spoke a few months ago. I believe the timing wasn't quite right then." I paused, letting the words settle. "I remember," I said. "Well, I'm hoping it is now," he continued. "I'd like to revisit our offer, with a few upgrades." I walked slowly back to my desk, the paper cup warm in my hand but already forgotten. Jonah didn't waste time. He laid it all out clearly. Double the base salary, equity stake, relocation flexibility if I wanted it, but also a dedicated floor in their new DC office, 3 blocks from Halston. "And one more thing," he added, voice quieting slightly. "This wasn't just our idea. We were encouraged to reach back out." "By who?" I asked. There was a pause. Then, "By Mikhail Berenger. He called you a non-negotiable asset. Said the deal fell apart because you weren't in it, and he doesn't want the next one unless you are." For a moment, I didn't say anything. I leaned back in the chair Halston had downgraded me to, and looked at the scuffed corner of my cubicle wall. I remembered what it felt like to be erased, to be reduced to silence, to initials that no longer matched the power behind them. And now here I was. Not begging, not pitching, being invited, chosen. "Jonah," I said carefully, "I appreciate the offer, but before we talk numbers again, I have a condition." "Of course," he replied quickly. "What do you need?" "I choose my team. I approve every hire under my division, especially in post-deal integration. No exceptions." Another pause, but shorter this time. "Done?" he said. "Anything else?" "Yes," I added. "One more thing." I opened the drawer and pulled out a manila folder I had kept sealed since Munich. Inside was a note, the letter Mikhail had slipped under my hotel room door that night. I reread it silently, heart steady this time. "I don't just want to oversee deals," I said. "I want full life cycle authority, from negotiation to implementation to renewal." "You'll have it," Jonah answered. No hesitation. By the end of the call, I hadn't said yes, but I hadn't said no. I hung up, placed the phone face down on my desk, and stared out the window, watching a flock of birds cross the sky above the Halston headquarters tower. The same glass box that had tried to trap me, then replace me. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about restoration, about what happens when you don't just survive being erased. You become the name they can't move forward without. And this time, I wasn't waiting for permission. I was the one making the call. It felt surreal, sitting in a boardroom overlooking Midtown Manhattan, sun slicing through the tall windows, leather folders lined across a custom walnut table. Same contract, same jets, same billion-dollar figures. But this time, I wasn't just in the room, I was leading it. The pen in my hand felt heavier than usual, maybe because it wasn't just ink anymore. It was a signature that meant everything had changed. "Ready when you are?" Jonah said, sliding the final agreement across the table. I looked down at the front page. Total contract value, $1.125 billion client. Yerva Aerospace Vendor, Avionics Global Oversight. Executive, Nicole Vance. My name wasn't just on the document. It was embedded into its very function. Yerva had been clear in their final draft. All stages of post-deal operations, logistics, compliance, client reporting, must be managed directly by Nicole Vance. Substitution is not permitted. They weren't taking any more chances. And honestly, neither was I. When I signed, I didn't just close a deal. I reclaimed my place, not at Halston, but above it. I had left their building quietly. I had absorbed the humiliation. I had sat in silence while they rewrote history with someone else's name. Now I was signing the future, without them. The press release went live at 10:30 a.m. Full color spread on Avionics's homepage. Within minutes, Bloomberg and Reuters picked it up. Avionics secures landmark jet contract with Yerva. Former Halston executive leads new era of aviation strategy. I didn't check Halston's reaction. I didn't need to. But according to a text from someone still inside, Lena saw the article on LinkedIn during a leadership huddle. She froze mid-sentence. Robert read it half an hour later in his private office. Neither one of them had known. No memo, no leak. Just a public unveiling they couldn't undo. There was no call from them, no message, not even a polite congratulations. But I didn't want it. Because in that moment, I didn't need an apology. I had the proof. On paper, in ink, in headlines. And the only thing more satisfying than being recognized was knowing they'd been replaced in silence by the very person they erased. Me. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. I stepped out onto the top floor of Avionics's new DC headquarters. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling glass, soft track lighting guiding me forward. I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out the new card. Nicole Vance, Chief Global Officer, Avionics 3 months ago. I had been erased from a door. Now, my name was engraved in the strategy that would shape an entire industry. As I made my way toward the boardroom, I passed a glass-walled lounge where a large screen played muted news footage. I didn't stop, but I saw the headline scroll across the ticker. Halston announces 200 job cuts amid failed deal fallout. CEO Robert Halston exits company. I didn't feel joy. Not exactly. I felt release. They had tried to shrink me, and now their empire was folding into itself, like a paper crane dipped in water. The very people who dismissed me had gambled on silence. But silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. My phone buzzed once in my hand. A text. From Lena. "Can we talk? I think I made a mistake." I looked at it for a moment. Then I locked the screen and slid it into my bag. No reply. No explanation. There was nothing left to say. I pushed open the boardroom door and stepped into a room of waiting executives. The energy shifted. In my hand was a new deal. $3.1 billion, a global supply and service agreement. And just like before, one clause written in plain language. All operations must remain under direct oversight of Nicole Vance. As I took my seat at the head of the table, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about legacy, not the kind they print in brochures, the kind that echoes quietly, in rooms where your name carries weight no title ever could. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, replaced by someone who never walked the road you paved, then you know what this moment feels like. And if you've made it through that storm, then I want you to remember this. You don't have to shout to win. You don't have to fight dirty to rise. Sometimes, the most powerful comeback is when you say nothing and sign everything. If this story hit home, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever been replaced, I want to hear what happened. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because out there, someone else is sitting in silence, wondering if they matter. Let's remind them they do.